Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. I apologise for my absence last week, but I'll get to that momentarily. It's good to be back. Let me show you a photograph of the beach in the Seychelles where I spent last week. You can see Hannah there, and it really was extremely beautiful and very interesting. On the last day of my visit, we visited two other islands, and on the ride back to Mahe, we found ourselves in some seriously choppy waters. It was a white-knuckle ride. The Deputy Governor of the Bank of Uganda told me it was a lunar thing coupled with a strong southwesterly wind. And both of us were wondering how the Syrians and other refugees are coping now as winter comes, as winter sets in around that part. What was really extraordinary, however, on this ferry ride back to Mahe at about 6:30 in the evening, was the insight it gave us all into the society. The ferry was packed with young folks, all obviously going to the capital. Lots of teenagers, and admittedly it was a Saturday, but it looked like these young folks were right on the edge if you studied the behaviour. Hunter S. Thompson says the edge, there is no honest way to explain it, because the only people who really know where it is are the ones who have gone over, and it certainly felt like these young folks were going over it. But then Anne, who was at the conference, told me, Ali Khan, have you been around Westlands after dark? And I couldn't help wondering, this demographic dividend that we have, what exactly is actually happening? I'd like to thank the government of the Seychelles and the Afrexim Bank for what was a fascinating conference. And I'll talk a little bit about that. I wrote about it in my weekly piece. Staying with Hunter S. Thompson, we are all alone, born alone, die alone. And in spite of the true romance magazines, we shall all someday look back on our lives and see that, in spite of our company, we were alone the whole way. I do not say lonely, at least not all the time, but essentially and finally alone. This is what makes your self-respect so important. And I don't see how you can respect yourself if you must look in the hearts and minds of others for your happiness. Political reflections. Ahmet Davutoglu, the Prime Minister, just tweeted, Elhamdulillah. And I concluded by saying Erdogan's strategy, which was in my view, throwing a match on the tinderbox. And I'm sure a lot of conspiracy theorists will reckon that bomb attack in Ankara was not was a key momentum builder for Erdogan, and I'm sure they feel, and I haven't gone and checked, but that he had a hand in that. But his strategy, essentially throwing a match on the tinderbox, consolidated his base and won the vote. And you can see that. With 97.4% of the votes counted, the AKP had won 49.4%, giving the AKP at least 315 seats in the 550-member parliament, more than enough to form a government on its own. The main secularist CHP opposition saw its share of the vote slip to 25.4%. And this is where, and while support for the nationalist MHP party fell sharply to 12%, or about 40 seats, compared to 80 in June's election. And I think that's what pushed, taking those votes away from the MHP, pushed Erdogan over the line. The leftist pro-Kurdish HDP party gained a small crumb of comfort from passing the 10% threshold it needed to secure seats as a party in the new parliament. But that was less than 13% it scored in June. But that was enough to deny the AKP a so-called supermajority. the 330 MPs ruling party needs to be able to call a referendum on changes to the country's constitution. Let me put up a photograph that David Kenner tweeted of a smiling Erdogan throwing roses. And this outright win was a big surprise for the markets. Citibank, for example, had seen only a 10% probability for this very outcome. Jonathan Ferro tweeted, huge move lower in dollar Turkish lira, biggest since 2008. Market caught on the wrong side. So really, Erdogan has upended expectations here, and his strategy evidently worked. I pray for the souls of the Russian passengers who died in the crash over the Sinai. I'll put up a photograph of the debris from the plane crash in Egypt and take you back to something I wrote in August last year, when I said the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of the MH370. And I said since then planes have been falling out of the sky like flies. And the uncertainty around the MH370 and MH17 is sharpened by the way the story about those two crashes is seemingly turned on and off. And that took me to Don DeLillo. We're not witnessing the flow of information so much as pure spectacle or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here where crowds might gather in astonishment. A Weiwei tweeted a wonderful image of Martin Luther King and many more, but I like Martin Luther King. It's the one particularly, I'll put that up. Let's move on to the currency markets and see what's happening. The euro is at 110.29, bounced off a 2.5-month low just below 109. That was last week. Dollar index is around the 96.784 level. Japanese yen 120.45. Swissy 0.9869. The pound 154.32. Aussie 0.7138. India rupee 65.455. The Rial 385.65. Egyptian pound 801.53, and the Rand 13.7874. Let me put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think the market's wary of a potential rate hike in December. I'm of the view they might well skip that, given that they skipped so many earlier opportunities in this year. Euro dollar, I'll put up a 3-month chart of that as well. I think it remains oversold, notwithstanding a very sharp shift in bond yields into negative territory. Gold, my stop was at 11.45, so we stopped out, but remember we got in there just a little bit higher. I'll put up a 6-month chart, a little bit soft of late. Crude oil, $46.75. It's picked up a little bit, but I don't think that this is the bull market returning. I think we'll be coming back in a trading range. We should see it fall back again. S&P has lowered Saudi Arabia's grade to A+, which is the 5th highest level, but they've given it a negative outlook. Saudi stock market dropped after that ratings downgrade, and a bit of contagion across the Gulf as well, with the Dubai market down more than 2%. Net foreign assets declined $7.7 billion to $646.9 billion, which is the lowest level since November 2012, Sana said. I was in Seychelles with the Afrexim Bank, and the subject of discussion was corporate governance. I'll put up a photograph from the opening ceremony. My piece over the weekend is titled "The Seychelles, the Afrexim Bank and the Issue of Our Time, Governance." I'm writing this article from Mahe, this was on Sunday morning, which is one of the 115 islands that make up the Seychelles archipelago, which lies 1,500 kilometers off East Africa. Kenya's flight sort of left from Mombasa shore, and you just fly over the ocean, and then suddenly you see these islands. Seychelles has a population of 90,000, and that is the smallest population of any independent African state. The Minister for Finance, Trade and the Blue Economy, Jean-Paul Adam, informed me that the Seychelles receives tourists 3 times its population every year. If Kenya was to receive the same ratio of tourists, we would be welcoming 120 million tourists a year. The minister described to me how the Seychelles navigated the 2008 financial crisis. Debt to GDP soared close to 125%, and the Republic defaulted, but now runs an annual surplus of over 5%. The debt to GDP ratio is in the 40% range after some help from the Paris Club and the IMF. Let us hope the Seychelles in 2008 is not a harbinger for some countries on the mainland continent. I was invited to the Seychelles by the Afrexim Bank, who, by the way, slotted our national airline $200 million to present at their 2nd annual forum, whose theme was Customer Due Diligence and Corporate Governance. You will agree that this is a seriously pertinent issue, and I commend the President of the Bank, Dr. Benedict Oki Orama, for taking leadership on this important issue, and for convening such a wide, diverse and eclectic group of Africans to discuss what is perhaps the most important issue of our time if we are serious about reinvigorating the Africa Rising narrative. The President of the Bank cited the following from the African Development Bank. Good corporate governance plays an important role in promoting both economic efficiency and equity through lower cost of capital, larger capital markets, higher market valuation of firms and profits. Indeed, a number of cross-country studies have demonstrated that countries that maintain good corporate governance performance, both in terms of the relevant legal regulatory infrastructure, that's the macro level, and corporations' observance of key standards and codes, micro level, also enjoy a higher level of sustained economic growth. Clearly, good governance at the corporate level has to go hand in hand with good governance at the level of the government. It's a feedback loop, and it's binary. Failure at the government level will necessarily create a negative feedback loop. Success at the government level will create a positive feedback loop. Empirical data which was presented at the conference showed that the difference between success and failure in this regard was more than 35% valuation and performance over a 5-year period. If Africa can get this right, the entire continent would grow in double digits, and it would not just be a random, lucky and fleeting fluke for the odd country here and there. I do not subscribe to the theory that was shared by one participant at the conference as we went to the beach on Saturday, who said in order to make a change in Africa, we need to do a Jerry Rawlings. I will leave it like that, and maybe you can go and check what Jerry Rawlings did in order to make a clean break with the past. Moving on, the Zanzibar opposition is to meet the Tanzanian military over the pole crisis. Outgoing President Jakaya Kikwete has instructed his office to facilitate talks between Chief of the Armed Forces and officials of the main opposition party in Zanzibar, the Civic United Front. Kikwete has also instructed the Inspector General of Police, Ernest Mango, to investigate complaints by CUF about some actions from some sections of the police force in Zanzibar, according to a statement emailed late Sunday by the Tanzanian presidency. State House would like to confirm that President Kikwete is as concerned about the political and security situation in Zanzibar as every Tanzanian, and has been working tirelessly and consulting widely over the last few days to find amicable and peaceful resolution to the situation in Zanzibar, according to the statement. The Zanzibar Electoral Commission Chairman Jecha Salim Jecha on October the 28th nullified elections in the semi-autonomous island after the CUF presidential candidate in this year's general elections in Zanzibar, Saif Sharif Hamad, declared himself winner of the October 25th poll. We're going to have to keep an eye on that. Aerospace Research Center Congo, the mission, put a rat in space. For 10 years, Congo's best-known rocket expert has been launching projectiles from yam farms here near the village of Menkau. His ground control center is a corrugated metal shed with a weather vane, contains a row of aging 11-inch televisions and desktop computers with floppy drives. There are relics of past flights like the Ovaltine can, in which a local rat nearly became the first Congolese animal to touch the stratosphere. None of the 5 craft engineered by the rocketeer, 45-year-old Jean-Patrice Keka, have reached space from the launch zone he built with his own money, 2 hours by dirt road from the capital of Kinshasa. But Mr. Keka's next creation, Troposphere 6, is more advanced. He designed the 3-stage engine rocket, nicknaming it Soso Pembe, or White Rooster, to power 120 miles up, 60 miles beyond what is considered the inner boundary of outer space. What a great story. Listen to this. There will be passengers aboard the spaceship, 6 years in the making, when he launches it next year. A few mosquitoes, a few flies, he says, and another rat. I will do my utmost to bring that rat back alive, he says, but if not, there's a lot of rats in Kinshasa. The South African All Shares up 8.08% year to date, and it's rowing against the tide because generally African indices are down. Dollar rand 13.78. We need to keep an eye on that. Egyptian pound remains above 8 at 801.64. The EGX 30 is down 16.96% year to date. Nigerian all shares down 15.77% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange had a strong session on Friday, bouncing 1.3%, but it remains down 10.96% year to date. The National Treasury Cabinet Secretary Henry Rotich likened the state of the economy to a plane going through turbulence and advised Kenyans to fasten their seatbelts. President Kenyatta, speaking for the first time about the troubles with the economy, said everything was okay. The country was moving forward. Speaking in Eldoret, Mr. Rotich conceded that the economy was going through a rough period. I want to liken this economic situation to a plane at 40,000 meters high, and there is turbulence. When you are faced with turbulence, you don't jump, but the cabin crew will tell passengers to fasten their seatbelts. That's what's happening in our economy now. Jason Lakin has written an interesting piece in the East African, 10 facts about the Eurobond, what we know, what we don't, and what's vague. And he's coming up with a question and is asking that in his reconciliation, he's saying 38.5 billion is currently unaccounted for, and asking why should basic facts about billions of shillings require us to sift through vague reports and still come up short. James Finley plans to sell its horticulture subsidiaries in Kenya and Tanzania for about $151.9 million US dollars. The company will retain Finley Flowers in Kericho, but sell Finley's Horticulture Kenya and Finley's Horticulture Tanzania to Sun Capital Partners. I learned from the Afreximbank conference that Kenya has the highest percentage of women on boards, 19.8%. EABL has the highest percentage of any corporate with 45.5%. Choppies has got the nod to buy 10 Ukwala stores for $1 billion shillings. Competition Authority of Kenya said it had sanctioned Choppies to buy the nearly a dozen Ukwala outlets in a deal valued at $10 million. Kenya moves to cripple human rights lobby. This is an article in the East African. The Kenya shilling remains below 102 at 101.895. The Nairobi All Shares 19-month lows. It's down 15.72% year to date. We've been in a bear market for a while. NSE 20 is down 24.33% and is at 3-year lows. Good to be back. Thank you for stopping by. It's thoroughly appreciated.